Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Surrey Schools Mental Health 40. My name is Daniel Toe. If you've not watched me before, I'm a district principal in the Surrey School District. And with me, I have Baylie McKnight from the Borderline Personality Disorder Society of BC. We do these broadcasts once a month, except during Christmas and spring break. We even do them in the summer. And normally we want to bring guests on to be able to give resources to parents, students, and of course, our staff, who are the linchpin of how we run things as a school district and how we serve students and families. And of course, in the Surrey School District, we want to respectfully acknowledge that we are on the shared traditional unceded territory of the Katzie, Samiamu, Kwantlen, and Coast Salish people, where we work, learn, and play. And we're here interviewing. I know Baylie is on Vancouver Island in Victoria, I believe, or right, Victoria. And I just wanted to point out before we ask her to share her story and to talk about her society and all the great things they do, I do want to share their website. And I actually start with this library on purpose because they have a lot of great resources. I know you can't see the web link, but it's bpdbc.ca, bpd.bc.ca, and there's a lot of great resources here for family and friends. If you want to know, and Baylie will talk more about these resources later, but if you go to the site and you click on about, you can learn all about personality disorder, what it is, borderline personality disorder, what it is, what are the symptoms. Again, we're going to tour the site a little bit later on, but it's a really great site. And of course, Bailey's going to tell us her story today, so I'm not going to go through this site right now, but Baylie, thank you so much for joining us. It's so great for us to be able to offer this type of professional development, but also interaction with wonderful professionals in our BC community who are doing such a great work with supporting people's mental health and wellness as you are doing. And of course, we're also co-broadcasting on the Stigma Free Society's Facebook Live as well. And so welcome all of you who typically watch on the Stigma Free Society's page, who are our valued partners in this work towards mental health and wellness and this journey towards helping students and families. So Baylie, please introduce yourself, tell us your story and how you even came up with the society and why you decided to do this such important work in your community and then now in our community as well.
Yeah, great. Yeah, thank you so much. So my name is Baylie McKnight, and I'm the co-founder and president of the BPD Society of BC. I'm also a registered social worker and a person with lived experience. So a little bit about my story. I started noticing symptoms of mental health and mental illness when I was 11. How that manifested for me was I started having a lot of anxiety, symptoms of OCD, PTSD. I was self-injuring at a really young age. I was running away, sometimes even down to the east side of Vancouver. I was noticing this like really young. I was having difficulties in relationships. At the time, I was going to a private school in Victoria. And my parents and the counselors at the school really didn't know what to do. I was falling through the cracks. My parents even went to access like groups, and they just kind of threw up their hands and was like, we're just, this is beyond us. We just don't even really know what to do with your child. I went to private counselors too at the time, and again, like I got a formal diagnosis of anxiety, OCD, PTSD, and nothing really fit.
Right.
Yeah. And so I just really struggled all throughout my teen years. I went to alternative schools. I always stayed in school. It was something that was like really instilled in me was education.
Mm-hmm.
I even skipped grade 10. I did an assessment. And when I went back to school, I like a regular kind of like high school, I did an assessment and I was ahead of the years. But all through that, I really struggled with, my mood and relationships and family dynamics and all of that. Yeah. And so I also struggled with like substance use at a really young age. And I, for about a year and a half, I was using crystal meth at a young age.
Wow.
like 14 to 15 and a half. When I realized I was going to become a big sister, it was something that was really important to me that she had someone to look up to. And as of last week, I'm 20 years off of all hard drugs. So yeah,
Amazing.
yeah.
Can I ask you a question? I didn't know this part of your story actually, and I'm moved by it. And we deal in the work that we do with our staff. I deal with a lot of students who dabble in substance abuse. Can you just elaborate on that and why you made those choices? I mean, now we know 20 years later, borderline personality disorder and mental health, but why did you feel that you needed to dabble in those things?
Yeah, I think part of it for me was two things that stand out for me. Is one was there wasn't any education in my schools around the harms of substance use. And so I really didn't know what I was getting into. And two, for me, was that I didn't have the tools to emotionally regulate. And I had a lot of feelings, and I wasn't getting access to the care that I really needed at the time. So I think those two, looking back, was what was really standing out for me, is what I needed. Yeah. And so after that time, I dedicated to going and speaking in schools. And so from 16 to 20, I went and I did education presentations to thousands of kids in schools about my story, and did street outreach, mentoring to youth in schools and on the streets. And so, because I saw the importance of that, and that's something that I didn't get as a youth.
And what the cause of the shift was? You having a baby sister? Was that what it was?
I think that was like the catalyst to it. It was also not part of like my value system. Like, I don't think it was ever something like I really truly wanted to do. There was also a lot of like harm that was done to me. I had a lot of trauma as part of like the lifestyle and in that world. So yeah, that was a big part of it too.
Okay, sorry to interrupt your story, but I'm so enraptured by it. I keep asking questions. I'm sorry. Yeah, keep going, please. So you.
Oh no, if you have another question, that's fine.
No. Keep going. Sorry, I'm keep interrupting. Yeah.
Yeah. So when I was 18, I started looking into more of mental health, and I ended up going to Vancouver and getting an assessment, and I got formally diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. And I drove over every week from Victoria to Vancouver to get treatment because the wait lists were so long in Victoria, and I just really desperately needed the help. And I feel like that was like an awakening moment for me. It just clicked. It made sense. It was something that I think I needed like my whole life. I needed that diagnosis and confirmation. It just made sense. All of the symptoms that I had had and had shown since an adolescent. And I think that's part of what we notice a lot at the BPD Society in our support groups with families that come to us, is that they are seeing these symptoms in their youth, starting at usually in puberty, is a lot of these BPD traits or symptoms at a young age, and aren't getting access to a formal diagnosis and early intervention. And I feel like if I had gotten the diagnosis earlier, then I would have gotten the proper treatment that I needed, which was not available to me.
Yeah. And as now, a registered clinical counselor and someone in this work, how do we help families or even teachers and people in schools recognize some of those traits? Because, it wasn't recognized in you, and you obviously, at 16 and 20, you're able to do presentations in schools. You made a changeover, and people thought, oh, she's better. This is great, right? But then you weren't diagnosed till you were 19, 20, but you did have that shift. So how can people see this disorder or any other mental illness? Like, what are some symptoms and signs we should look for?
Yeah, so I think that there's part of it is ending the stigma around BPD. Like, I think that's a huge piece of it, first of all, because there is a stigma around not diagnosing youth under 18 and thinking that youth will grow out of it. So there's that piece, first of all. So some of the symptoms for BPD are a fear of abandonment, difficulties regulating emotions. BPD is the only diagnosis that has self-injurious behavior and suicidal ideation in its criteria. And it's a very high percentage. For example, 10% of people with BPD will die by suicide, and 75% will attempt, with between 65 to 85% self-injuring. So it's a very high percentage, and that is one of the symptoms to look for. Also, difficulties in interpersonal relationships, chronic feelings of emptiness, difficulties with anger. And it's the combination, I think, of the symptoms to look for. It's not like one piece. And also the difficulties with impulsivity is another one. So it made sense, with like that could be the substance, for example, the running away. 75% of people with BPD will at some point in their lives have a substance use disorder. It's actually the highest percentage of co-occurring disorders with BPD is a substance use disorder in their lifetime. So it's another piece to look for too. Substance use,
So can maybe tell us now how this led to your society and the work that you folks do as the Borderline Personality Disorder Society? Because again, I could probably talk to you for hours about your story. Your story in and of itself is so inspiring. And talk about the society and what you folks do and how you help now that you've realized you have this. What caused you to start this society with this awesome webpage and many groups that now you support other people and all those things?
Of course, yeah. So when I was 21, so a couple of years after I had gotten the treatment, I realized that there was a lot of gaps in service for people with BPD and a lot of stigma. And so I wanted to do something about that. Part of it was passion, part of it was anger, and I just wanted to.
And the impulsivity, maybe you're.
Maybe a little bit. I find that people with BPD are very driven and creative, intelligent, passionate people, and so I. Along with Elizabeth Bogod and some my mom and her family and some like-minded individuals, we decided to create a society, and we started in 2010 with a small peer support group in Victoria, and we became a nonprofit in 2012, and shortly after a charity. And then we expanded our peer support groups throughout British Columbia in several communities. And and we've been doing work ever since, doing awareness presentations. We recently, a couple of years ago, started doing treatment groups, dialectical behavioral therapy, which is the evidence-based treatment for BPD. We saw that was a huge need. Like, the peer support groups were really a holding space for people with the disorder and also loved ones to find validation, hope, shared experiences, and as a part of the continuum of care. And also there was a piece missing, that where do we refer people when they aren't able to get the treatment in the community? Like, there just wasn't enough. And so we decided, let's create it ourselves. And so that's what we did a couple of years ago.
You have me clapping a few times during the presentation, I'm just telling you.
Yeah.
Thank you. You do actually we don't always get comments, but I'm getting comments from on a text from some people in the district. One of our colleagues is saying, knowing these signs, she wishes she should have known for her own child. We got Andrew Paquette from the Stigma Free Society saying very brave, courageous, and inspiring. But we also have someone, and I'll send you the message because Baylie would love to give you a Zoom at Princeton Secondary School. I believe our Princeton Community Health Table got some info from your society a couple of years ago. So you are getting people commenting here, even. And if anybody here has comments or you have comments later, you can definitely leave it in the chat or the comment box. I'll make sure Baylie gets the questions, or if you have questions for our school district, of course, I've put the website on there as well. But you've grown this society to be able to help lots of people and have all these wraparound supports. But maybe talk a little bit more about wraparound family. You mentioned your mom a few times and how your mom was part of starting the society. I hear she's watching right now, and so yeah, right. So maybe talk about that wraparound support and how that helped you, because I think a lot of people are learning about how you came through this. Obviously, very successful, obviously very driven, but you didn't turn it all around yourself. I think if you talk a bit about the support you got in coming to become the person you are today.
Yeah, so I feel like the DBT was really crucial to my recovery. Of course, it being that it's the evidence-based treatment, I don't think that for everyone DBT is the end all be all. Some folks, like, they need after that they may need trauma therapy, which I still continue to do today, which they call second stage in DBT. Of course, there's the peer support groups. People having community is really important. That sense of community, it's definitely part of the continuum of care. Having peer support, family having support is really important. Also having access to psychiatry so people can get a proper diagnosis.
Yes.
And of course having prevention and early intervention for adolescents, so they're not slipping through the cracks. And also, like, and that starts in schools, and so that's what I found was part of what was lacking for me, is even starting with education, around the substance use, or even with mental health. Speaking in schools about the signs and symptoms of mental illness, or stigma, or substance use, or self-injury or suicide. I think that that's also really crucial. So there's all these pieces, that can be really important in the continuum of care for adolescents, families, and adults. Yeah.
Awesome. So as you, again, looking through your site, and we can go back to it in a bit, but what are some, people sometimes fear therapy, and you did mention that you still participate in therapy yourself, as you are a therapist, right? Can you talk about the importance of that? And because there is stigma around that, like people are sometimes afraid to say, "Oh, I have a therapist," or "I'm going to sessions," or I seek counseling. It almost is a sign of weakness, and I find that a lot of people don't even want to subscribe to it. When we talk to employees, or when we talk to students, we say, "Hey, this free counseling service is available, or we can hook you up with a therapist." We're like, "Oh, no, I'm okay by myself." Right? Have you encountered that as a therapist, and how does one break through the stigma of that?
Yeah. I think that is part of why we do, like, the awareness presentations, is because that's helping to break down the stigma. Also, I think that's also why the peer support groups are really helpful, because people talk about their own experiences in therapy, what's worked for them, what's not. We also, on our website, have a section on community resources that talks about, like, peer approved therapists, and people get to share, like, this therapist was supportive, and they're anti-stigma, and so they supported me through my journey with BPD. And I think, again, that, like, sense of community has been really helpful for people, because there's so much stigma around BPD. People maybe even more so fear going to therapy because they may have had a bad experience.
Right.
And so we've had people even in the peer support group sit in the parking lot for a couple weeks,
Wow.
before they go to inside, maybe because of social anxiety, or a lot of people have been kicked out of programs before just for having the diagnosis of BPD, or they've been turned away, or therapists don't want to see them because they have the label of BPD. And so we have a policy of turning them
Therapists won't
away.
see people. Oh, why
Yeah.
would that be? Sorry, that's actually shocking to me. I've never heard that.
Yeah. Just even because of the diagnosis of BPD, there's some research behind it too about that some mental health professionals will have less empathy for people with the diagnosis.
Really?
There's labels of manipulative, attention-seeking, dramatic when thinking about somebody with borderline personality disorder. So there's a lot.
Really? Sorry,
Yeah.
this is shocking to me. I apologize for being unprofessional on YouTube. Like,
Yeah, it's
why would
very
that be?
common.
That's shocking to me. So you're saying some professionals won't see people with BPD?
No. Yeah. It's quite common, either like private therapists or like in the hospital system, like they'll be turned away because of the diagnosis. And so like our policy is that we turn no one away. And that's why
Again,
we do the awareness
yes.
presentations, because we want to break this stigma of, that this isn't, people, if they're displaying a certain behavior, it's because they're, seeking treatment, or they have the impulsivity is because of the criteria. They're help seeking, right? So we want to change that narrative. Yeah.
Well, I find it shocking where, and I'm just going to pull up your site very quickly, where it says 10%, as you said, 10% of people with BPD die by suicide, with such a shocking stat
Mm-hmm.
that the notion that anybody would turn someone away with this diagnosis, I can't even get over that. That's bizarre. So how do you folks, where you are, maybe talk a little bit more about how you break the stigma, and then we can leak into resources for staff and teachers. Again, we only have about 15, 20 minutes left. So I want to get into the resources, and I do want to go through your site, but like, how do you break that stigma? That's bizarre. Like, when you're seeking help and people are turning you away, I can't believe that would happen.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's shocking that still in this day and age, this is, how we're treating folks. I think that we do it in everyday interactions, in everything that we do, in the conversations that we have with people, everywhere. Like, it's just in our conversations that we have day to day. Like, if we're talking with people, whether that be a mental health professional or a community member,
Right.
I think it's in the conversations that we have with people and how we change that narrative. So if somebody is using stigmatizing language, we will, maybe challenge that, or we will talk about facts and myths. Like right here, yeah, we'll talk about a fact versus a myth. We will bring awareness to communities. We have our BPD Awareness Day every year.
What day is that? I actually, you said it'll be a big long day where people can like
Yeah.
watch 6 hours of video, right? That's awesome.
Yeah, so we have our BPD Awareness Day this year. It's May 4th, and it's about 6 hours long. And we have professionals and also people with lived experience, and they'll tell their story, or we'll have professionals talk about the current research and treatment of BPD. And this year's our 5th annual. And so it's a day to bring awareness and break stigma. So that's another way that we do it. And just even the way that we interact with people with the disorder, in every interaction that we have, whether it be through conversations with a peer support group or through email or through the DBT group. It's just those micro conversations. We live it is how we do it. Yeah.
Yeah. So as I'm scrolling through your site and showing the myths and facts, just so people to see as you talk, um, what are some of the things that you started your career at the age of 16, going to schools and talking to people about substance abuse, and really that was, the birth of your sister, that sort of catalyst of that. Now you've got this site, you're the president of this organization, and you're doing, things in the community. What are your plans for that in the Lower Mainland, Vancouver, where we are, at Surrey? And what are some resources staff can look to? And I can go to your site as well as you want. I can start at the library if that's sort of what we talked about before this conversation, and then I'll let you jump off from there. Just resources for staff. What are some things you do? Some of the groups that you might be putting on, and how maybe we can start a group here if that's something that students or staff or families feel like we need in the Surrey School District.
Of course, yeah. So as you can see, we have our website here. We have PDF handouts that people can download or print, and that's we have a section for friends and family. It talks about validation strategies, and that is what we suggest of how to interact differently with somebody that has a lived experience with BPD, ways to communicate effectively. We also have skills and wellness, and those are some DBT strategies for people with BPD. It's also been shown to be effective for anyone, really. For example, there's the Family Connections. Maybe people have heard of that, where it teaches family members, loved ones, partners, friends, how to navigate relationships and cope and support somebody with the disorder. And they teach DBT skills. And we also have like the myth and fact section. What is BPD? What it's not. We also have the community resources section. So if people are wondering about referrals.
Yeah, let me go back to that. Community resources. Is that here? Where am I?
How we can help.
How we can help. Okay. You see, we didn't practice this. I'm sort of just flying off the seat of my pants because I'm so enraptured by everything that you do. So I'm just like, I got to look at everything now. This is great. Here you go.
Yeah, so we have Vancouver Island resources. We have Vancouver Lower Mainland resources, and you'll see that we have the adult.
There you go.
And then adult, and then adolescent. We also just recently added Kamloops and Kelowna. And we always are looking to add more. If there's anyone that knows about other DBT programs or BPD related resources, we welcome any public or private programs on there to expand. So these are some referral resources. People do contact us often, whether it's a person with lived experience or a mental health professional or a support person looking for like, where do we get help? And so this is a good section to look to for that. Currently, our services that we offer, and that's under the how we can help services section. So we offer virtual peer support groups. That one, we've done a hybrid model. We noticed that a lot of people really enjoyed the virtual group the past couple of years. So we kept that. It's also able to target rural and remote communities. We even have people from all around the world join us for that. And that's for people with lived experience, loved ones. We also have professionals drop in to see if it's a good fit for a referral or if they'd like to learn more. So we do have professionals join us sometimes. And we do have in-person support groups too in Victoria, Nanaimo, Vancouver, and New West.
Wow, Surrey's right across the bridge from New West. Surrey School District, folks. It's right there, right across the bridge.
Yeah, and it's one of our oldest running groups too. So, and there's about, I think, an average, my mom would know this more, but I think it's an average about 15 to 20 people each group. So yeah, people aren't alone. There's people out there, and they receive a lot of support. And then we have our DBT skills group twice a year. I guess that's at the bottom.
Okay.
And yeah, so that's a 24-week DBT multi-skills group. And so we're in our third round now. And it's an affordable option. It's $30 comparatively to sometimes can be like $150 for private pay. It's virtual, so it can be anyone in BC. And we're hoping to expand to have an adolescent program. And then we also have our awareness presentation. So if a professional is wanting to learn more, so we've spoken at high schools, colleges, universities, nonprofits, and schools, and if people are wanting to learn more about how to support someone with BPD, what BPD is or isn't, the different types of treatments, resources, that type of thing, we will do that at no cost, and we can do that virtually. We can also do it in Victoria or Vancouver in person right now, or we can discuss other options. Two things that we would really love to do is and expand is early intervention and prevention. So there's some really good evidence-based programs out there for early intervention, like the DBT adolescents programs. Like I mentioned, there is one in Surrey for adolescents already running through the Child and Youth Mental Health team. And then, and we'd like to obviously see more of that happening. There's my mom.
I do want to talk a bit more about your mom, because she's giving great information for the people who want to contact you. But maybe I just want to know how having your mom have your back this whole time has what that has meant to you, to help you become the person you've become today.
Yeah, sure. So my mom has been there through everything. Through thick and thin, and she is on the board, and she's a founding member on the board, and so she does all of her admin work. She's the secretary treasurer, and she does all like the spreadsheets, and like she just does all the stuff in the background and answers emails and stuff like that. She does so much work for the society, and she also helps me stay emotionally grounded and at the same time. Even though she's retired, she's still working really hard. My mom's my rock, and I wouldn't be here without her. I couldn't do it without her. So,
and I say that because I think all of us, one message I always want to get out to youth is, and to staff even, to be, for you it was your mom, but for some it could be their teacher, for some it could be their like someone they meet in a group, or a peer supporter, or someone like that. I think all of us need that one person, or one or two people, or who are our rocks, and who that will never let us go. We can always turn to them if we're not feeling strong, or not feeling we can accomplish someone. And it's amazing to me that for you it's your mom, but I encourage people to find that person, because success comes when we feel supported as people, right? And I think for you that seems to be sort of the messaging of your story, that people supported you, and now you're looking to support others.
Yeah, definitely.
So in the last 5 to 10 minutes, what is your main messaging for anybody watching, whether it be families, students, staff, people from Princeton. Your mom, what's your main messaging about borderline personality disorder, mental health, and what we can do to continue the work of supporting young people, early intervention, the importance of that, and noticing these, some of these symptoms early on?
Yeah. Well, I want to stress the importance that people with BPD aren't attention-seeking, manipulative, dramatic. I think it's really important to understand that people with BPD have experienced a lot of traumatic invalidation, and that functional recovery is possible. And I think I'm living proof of that. So,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of people that come, into our programs that are also living proof of that. We have a lot of outcomes from our DBT that also show that too. And there's a lot of research backing it through DBT. There is hope, there is help. For people that are still struggling with the disorder. There's a lot of people that it's up to 6% of the population will be living with a diagnosis of BPD. So there's a lot more people than I think the community may realize. And so people aren't alone. There's a lot of, I think a lot of people are surprised when they come to the support group and they see I've hear a lot, I've never met somebody with BPD, and then they come to the group, our virtual group, there can be up to 40 people at a time. And so even in our in-person, our Victoria is our longest running, and we've had to squeeze 35 in the room sometimes. So, people with BPD, they're not alone. There is help, there is hope, recovery is possible. And I think it's just really important that that we break the stigma around that it's untreatable, and that it's not possible to get well with BPD, and that early intervention and prevention piece, I think, is key to the trajectory for adolescents. I think a lot of trauma, complex PTSD, can co-occur a lot with BPD. And I think for me, I also have that diagnosis, and I at times wonder if that diagnosis wouldn't have happened if I had the early intervention, on top of the complex PTSD wouldn't have happened on top of the BPD if I had the early intervention too, because but I wouldn't change a thing, honestly, because my story is the BPD diagnosis is part of my story. Not all of who I am, but I wouldn't have changed anything, because I'm able to help so many people now. So I'm really grateful for that. And I hope to keep doing more. I think I just wanted to add, I recently opened a private practice, and I called it Chiron Center for Mental Health and Trauma. And the reason why I called it Chiron was because Chiron means the wounded healer. And I truly think that that's, kind of my calling and my purpose in life. And I've always known that from a young age. And I really enjoy giving back. So
that's awesome. So you have a private practice. Just and here, your mom. Actually, I'm talking to your mom in the comments. I don't know if you see it, but she's like, "Oh, well, let's arrange a mother." I said, "Oh, we should arrange a mother-daughter show." She's like, "Yeah, I could arrange that." But she actually talks about something quite important. Let's get a DPTA group for adolescents in elementary schools, and we're
and DBT steps. DBT steps too, because that's also what's built-in program for schools. It's really been showing successful in the States. So I'd love to bring that to schools too.
And I would love, and I said to both of you, well, you online and her offline, that I'd love to have that discussion offline to see if Surrey could could be potentially a place that we could, trial some of these things, because we do have a bit of a paucity of services for elementary students. We do have programs with child youth mental health in some of our school sites, but we can only really serve 15 at a time, and to be able to do something innovative like this, and to be able to work with elementary schools to provide support for young people to do that early intervention is so critical and so important. And Sheila says Princeton Middle School may also be interested. We're very much championing mental health. MHSU actually don't.
Mental health and substance use, yeah.
Substance use, thank you, info in schools. So yeah, definitely get in contact with Sheila, who obviously wants to get in contact with you. But I do want to do your organization justice by saying it is a nonprofit. They do survive off donations. So all of these virtual peer support groups, in-person support groups, all of which are free, all these presentations, all of which are free. And that other thing, which is twice a year, the DBT, which is $30, which is unheard of. That's cheaper than 5 coffees. All of this comes, oops, I just shared my Twitter of me sharing this conversation. Anyways, but all of this doesn't come for free for them. And so, if you're interested, it's a tax deductible donation, I'm assuming, because it's a nonprofit, right?
And
so definitely donate to the Borderline Personality Disorder Society of BC. I'm so glad to have met you. And having had that initial connection and met you, and to be able to look at the wonderful work you're doing, to met your mom, which is awesome. And I know you have private practice, of course, going in and working with families and individuals, hopefully in early intervention, which is what you said you want to do as well, and giving back that way. Your society is amazing. Is there any final thing that you want to say to everybody as we close this up, and as I wish everyone well, and hopefully hundreds and hundreds of people watch this and learn more about the wonderful things you're doing? But any final words from Baylie? I'll give that to you.
Just keep doing the good work, everyone. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Baylie. I appreciate you. And your mom is saying you can also e-transfer. Wow, she is like the queen of marketing. E-transfer in the comments. Please e-transfer to info@bpdbc.ca, or check us out on Canada Helps or PayPal. That's what she's saying in the comments, in case people missed that. I love it so much. Your mom's your greatest supporter. It's so good. If I could cry online, I would. But
thank you so much for having me. I appreciate taking the time.
No problem. And don't leave. I'm going to say goodbye to everyone, but you've used StreamYard before. As I close this, you don't disappear. So thank you, everyone, for watching. Everyone from the Surrey School District, employees, staff, students, people from the Stigma-Free Society. We so appreciate you watching these once a month broadcasts. Hopefully, you learned a little bit here today. And please visit bpdbc.ca. Right, bcb.ca, and learn more about Borderline Personality Disorder Society of BC. And we can definitely, you'll see more of Baylie and her society and her mom, hopefully in the Surrey School District, as we look to support students and families in the largest school district in BC. And yes, Amy Belafonte, you can watch this afterwards. Just go to the YouTube link and just rewind, and we'll still be there, I guess, forever on the internet. Baylie, thank you so much. Baylie's mom, Deb, thank you so much. Appreciate all of you. Have a great day, everyone. Thanks for watching.